Then take a look at the microphone isolation ball shield. So we have our arm, and this is a adjustable arm, which is great. So all we got to do is lock that down for it to stay in place. And this actually feels very nice. So probably a nylon plug in there, so we're not going to be scarring this pipe up. We have a nice heavy base, and it has a soft material on the bottom to make sure that we're not going to be scratching our desk. So this is just going to thread in, and that is our stand. And here is the fun part. This is the isolation ball. So the cool thing about this, if you've ever seen those studios where you get the foam padding all the way around the walls, the main point of that is to reduce reflection. So that's going to be sound that bounces off the wall, comes back, and then the microphone reads it again. It can be very annoying for the listener, but it also takes up a lot of wall space, places where you can't put shelving or pictures or that kind of thing. This is going to give you a very similar effect, but it's going to be right around the mic itself. I have also seen things that are kind of like a sunshade, so it's got a bunch of foam pads that go around the microphone like that. This is a much more compact version. So great, not taking up space. You can see our pop filter, so it has two elements on it. So there's one on the back, one on the front. And we also have a shock mount. So this is going to help to isolate the microphone and make sure that any vibrations or taps or anything on the desk is not going to transfer through the stand to the mic. The way these work, you just grab these two levers, that will pull the clamp apart, you can drop the mic in, and you let it go. Here's that we can adjust the angle, so depending on the type of mic that we have, if we want to have this pointing up or down, or even straight out. And it'll appear, so we also have an insert in here, so if we want to put this whole shock mount on another arm, we can do that. And we have our instructions. So the microphone is just going to pass through this hole, so this should completely isolate all the sound that could penetrate to it. But it looks like this is also removable. So if you have a microphone that has a very large diaphragm, you'll still be able to fit that in there. It might not seal quite as well, but you'll still be able to use this isolation mount to seal around most of the mic. Very neat idea. So to test this, I'm going to be using a Stellar X3. This is a fairly large mic for this, but it does just barely fit. Okay, test. This is the Stellar X3. It has no pop filter, nothing. I can talk into the side, test. Talking to the other side, test. And let's check some plosives. Pop. Now let's see if I can fit this. Yeah, it does just barely fit over it. Something I wasn't even really thinking about was it actually kind of makes this thing look a lot nicer too. Like this looks much more impressive. It does take up more viewing room, so if I have this directly in front of me and I'm going to be playing games or anything like that, this is going to take up a little bit more room. But if your main concern is just the sound, then this is going to help with those plosives. Pop, test. It's also going to help with the reflections, so I'm going on the left side now, test, and test. And especially when it comes to things like background noise, then it's definitely going to be adding to that. Now, if I take this and I also add my denoiser, test. So this is a Stellar X3 with a monocaster with the isolation ball. Test. Pop. And I think that makes for very nice, clean audio. So I'm happy with that.